You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everyone, to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm Carlos Noche, and unfortunately, I'm not joined by my amazing podcast partner today. She's taking care of some family matters, and we wish her the best. Everything's okay, but, she just lost her sweet great aunt this weekend, and she wants to, be there for her family, which is where we all should be. Now, today's topic. Today, we're talking about being a new revenue leader and inheriting an existing team with predefined goals. How do you determine what that revenue engine should look like, from hiring to structure to processes? And even where do you focus your energy to have the best impact? And to help us with that today, we have George Eliopoulos. Hopefully I said that right.
Close. Eliopoulos, but it took me about 8 years first 8 years of my life to figure out how to say my own name too. So you're forgiven, Carlos.
Sorry, buddy. He's the head of sales at Pagaya, a global technology company in the financial services industry that provides an AI-driven approach to consumer credit, allowing lenders to make more personal point of sale and automotive loans without taking on the credit risk or losing the consumer relationship. George has also had a great career working for some great companies like PayPal, JP Morgan, and Onbe. George, welcome to the show today.
Carlos, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm sorry I missed your co-host. My thoughts to her and her family.
Thank you. She appreciate that. I always say she's the better half of this thing, so I'm sorry you got stuck with me.
A lot of people would say something like that as a placation, but Carlos, I know you, and I know that to be true without even having
It is so true. All right. To get our audience to know you almost as well as I know you, what is something that you're passionate about that those that only know you through work might be surprised to know about you, George?
Yeah, it's a long list. I think all of us are really complex, but I'd say one thing, and I don't do it as much as I'd like to anymore. It's actually turning my own wrenches, working on cars, be it routine maintenance or be it performance modifications. Unfortunately, cars have gotten pretty complex, and there's things I just don't want to break anymore. It's hard to tune a computer, easier to change out a carburetor. And I won't do things like changing my own oil just because I don't have environmentally safe way to dispose of that kind of stuff. But you can find me in a garage, changing brakes, installing performance air filters, exhaust, you name it. I've done quite a lot of work, and I have a lot of special tools that I paid a lot of money to use once, sitting in my garage, and a lot of scars on these hands to prove that I've done all the work myself. I think some of the scars go up to my elbows, but all great memories.
I need you as a neighbor, because when I run into a car issue, I'm the guy who goes, hey, someone's got to fix this.
I don't know if it's strange, but nowadays I'm because they become more complex, I'm more apt to work on someone else's car. Because if I broke it there, so sure, no problem, Carlos. But I'll take mine to the dealer, but I'll work on yours. I'm sure I got a way to fix it.
All right. Well, hey, George, why don't you give us a little bit of your background? Like what got you to this place in your career? Give us a little bit of the blow by blow through your illustrious career.
I don't know if illustrious is the word, but it's been awesome, honestly. At the time, I might have had a regret or two, but everything worked out great. And looking back, there are no regrets. I really started out, a lot of people think of me as a revenue guy. I've been selling for years in the tech space. Believe it or not, I actually started out my career in banking as an underwriter, more of a credit risk type of person. That started when I was in college. I had an internship with a bank that's today become part of Fifth Third, who just loved the mid-market type of space, analyzing businesses, getting to know how they run, just being intellectually curious, but always sitting aside and right side by side with bankers who were doing the selling and the relationship management. So through my time at JP Morgan, again, starting in risk there, I became a banker and was fortunate enough to be blessed with some great leaders who really inspired me to do more and gave me a chance to run my own team. And that was my first shot at management in the banking space, making loans to automotive dealers in the wholesale type of capacity. So for them to do mortgage loans, acquisition, buy their inventory. as well as helping them out with the indirect financing, as we call it. Quick plug into what I do today at Pagaya, where we help banks, ironically, do more of these indirect loans. You and I go to the dealership and need a loan from, pick a bank, Chase, let's say, or Fifth Third, or even a captive. I'm back in that world again. But I did that for a while, loved it. They say every 7 years you want to do something different. I did 14 years in banking, so I doubled that time just to make sure I wanted to make a change. But at one point in my career, I just decided I wanted to embrace a tech path, do something different, but not lose my skills. And that's where I found, or they found me, Braintree, which was part of PayPal. Braintree is online card processing, payment acceptance type of platform. It's the technology that powers an amazing set of payments out there for companies like Uber, Airbnb, and many more. They're there and you don't realize you've been using them. Had a fantastic set of people around me there, a company that was really focused on changing what commerce looked like online. And I was there for the mission. Really learned enterprise sales in that space, upper mid market sales, SMB sales, how to tie in a marketing strategy, just how to work in a company that had some resources, but had to be careful with the resources to build, to grow. And it was there where I really learned the magic of what enablement can do, what RevOps could do, what working together with product and marketing and sales in a triangle can really get done. And man, did we set some amazing records and do great things. I know I wax on about those days, but some of the best times in my career, in my life. From there, we could consolidate our sales teams between Braintree and PayPal, PayPal and Braintree. And I ended up running a large part of enterprise sales for North America for PayPal. Huge responsibility. I learned yet another level of complexity and how to operate, managing some of the largest online retailers in the world. You name it. If you've shopped there, probably in my portfolio, either online or in person. Asked for a lot of different challenges and roles there, and the folks at PayPal were great. Every time I wanted a new challenge or to do something different, be it online, in store, alternative payments, fraud tools, they gave it to me, and they really let me grow a lot, and grow I did. But eventually, I got that itch, that 7 year plus a year or so point, and I wanted to get back to building something smaller, but still had some mass, and that's where I found Onbe, where I became the chief revenue officer. They're a B2C payments company and just a phenomenal growth story there that I'm so proud to have been a part of there. But again, payments for another time. It's been now over 10 years in payments, and I just needed to do something a little different. And that's where I landed today at Pagaya, where I'm focused on AI, loan decisioning AI. So it's a new frontier for me. It's a different type of product, still enterprise sales, very complex sales, but it also brings in my history where I started in automotive finance and lending and underwriting, because now we're helping lenders make more loans. So talk about full circle.
That's awesome. It's interesting you mentioned AI, right? It's the hottest topic out there. You can't listen to an analyst call today without them mentioning AI somewhere in there, right? I heard someone mention this before. Usually a technology is out for a while before it catches on fire. And, with OpenAI and everything they did kind of publicly, some folks it feels like, hey, AI just started last year. But the reality is it's been in the works for many years. And is that the same case at Pagaya?
Much newer company. We're about 6 years old, a little bit over that. Public company, so grew super fast, over 800 million in revenues, where we said we'd finish this year. So I wouldn't say that it was something that started 20 years ago. Like chatbots have been around for a while, right? We pass them as AI nowadays. This is different. This is completely new technology, and pretty unique out there in the market.
So taking over a team is not your first rodeo. For other sales leaders that come on in, take over an existing team, obviously have a lot of growth goals around it. What recommendations might you want to start with for them? What would you recommend they start doing early on? Because you're only new for so long.
Right. Right. You're only new in one place for so long, right? You could still be new somewhere else. So I think if I go back to all the books I've read on this, right? Because there's so much literature that's been out there, and they'll never stop writing it. There's one theme I think is the most useful, and some of the aspiring new revenue leaders will maybe take some notes here. But those of us that have been around the block, head of sales, even chief sales officer, CRO, whatever you want to call it, probably just be nodding their heads like, "Yeah, that's about right." But here's the theme: it's everyone's gut-gotten opinion on things, and you start to absorb it from the job spec, the recruiter you talk to, if you're going into like a new company, the board members, if they're there, the CEO, but you just have to form your own opinion. Approach in neutral, no matter what you do, and absorb everything first. Think about it. And how would you react in a situation if someone was new coming in? And sometimes people tell me, my board or my boss said this, and this is the mission they gave me. And I would respond, yes, comma, but they brought you in because you're experienced. You know what you're doing. They trust you and they expect you to have some kind of modification or revision of the plan. So you're new, take advantage of that. Approach in neutral and make it your own is what I would say.
All right. So you come onto this new role. How do you start assessing like the team, the structure, the processes that are going on in the organization?
I'd start with the same advice we probably give most or all of our salespeople. 2 years, 1 month, right? Listen, right? Take time to assess where the business is currently at and where it needs to be, not just this year, but 3 years, 5 years. You're not part of the executive team. And yes, your goal is important. And if you just came up from the ranks, your whole year was your year, right? You always were used to thinking in this short 1 year spans of life. Where all the salespeople are, I guess, maybe healthily paranoid is what we would say, right? Like make it to the end of the year. But your goal's different now. Your job's different. You're really thinking long term. So what that requires is a patient evaluation of what you need to do to hit those longer term goals. Do you need to build a channel team? Do you need to penetrate a new vertical? Do you need to go into higher like enterprise segments, super enterprise, or you need to actually drive down into the mid market where profits can often be? Got to take all these things into consideration. And we'll probably come back to it later. Do you need a culture shift? Be careful on that one. Everybody thinks that they do, but how, to what degree is actually where the art is on that? And I think that you also would want to take a look at what kind of business you're in and where your revenue opportunities and risks are. Take time to really assess that. Here's some examples. I've seen people come in and they're just sellers and like, let's go get it, new business. But geez, you might have a really strong backbook, an existing set of customers. Your actual opportunity is to cross sell, to renew. You have to first preserve your revenue before you go get more in many cases. Maybe your business grew quickly, right? You have a new product and now you're up for renewal and you got to do that with skill to lock in the revenue. Maybe you have new products to cross sell. You gave away the initial product. You got to get your revenues and profits up there. Or scarily, maybe there's a new competitor. You were the only game in town, but now you got someone to defend against. Just absorb it all. Take careful planning before you just focus on one plan of action.
And George, I'm sure every, situation is different, but how much time do you recommend someone spend assessing, right? Because I'm sure that hey, I'm going to spend, 30, 60, 90 days, but then you go, oh, but now I have the pressure of the quarter.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do it well, you've actually been assessing from the interview process, right? And what that externally and everywhere else too. So really, I'm going to tell you about 3 months in seat before you really start making changes. Yes, I'm following a lot of the guidance that's out there, but it's right, is what I would have to say. What's important is that you're communicating to your boss, your peers, the board, what your plan is and keep everything on track. I would take it a step further. I would be very transparent to the people in your org, the people who report to you, and say, I'm not going to change a thing until this. I'm taking time to learn. I think there's a way to be vulnerable in front of everybody to get their trust when you do that. You just admit you don't know. You don't have to know. Now, reality. Will there be a hole, a blazing fire you have to put out? Of course, right? A manager leaves and you want to replace them with someone who you think will be a good cultural fit. Will you have the instinct to pull in your crew, right? People who worked for you before, right away, right off the bat, before you know this is really good for them? Yeah, you're going to have that instinct too. And I think that's another aspect that I've seen the best leaders that I've worked for do well. They wait before bringing in even their own people, the people that they trust. Well, why wouldn't I do that when building an org? Why would I only do that for those closest to me? Well, I would do it, period. Right? Let's make sure this is right. Make sure I learn the political landscape. Make sure I know how hard or easy it is to ramp people. Maybe I need to build up an entire apparatus before I can really scale this thing. You've got to ask yourself all these questions. And I think lastly, one that I've personally missed before early on in my career, corrected since, Do you have great people who are deserving of promotion and can fill that next role? Do you maybe just have to shift around some heads to get people in the right seats for optimal results? You might not have to wait 3 months for that.
Is there a particular order that you recommend certain, you kind of take?
I'd say I tend to index towards if I have it depends on the problem is I guess the way I'd answer that. If I have to build a channel sales team, for example, just to give something out there, I know the sales cycle is long, then I know the path to revenue is even longer than a direct sale because you got to help that channel partner sell. So if I have reasonable enough understanding of our business, there's other people that have been selling this type of product or partnership. I might move faster on that to get that going more quickly. On the other hand, I might take time with something, and this is something I learned by making a mistake, of course, moving too quickly with like a BDR program, building it from the ground up. It's powerful. It's something I always firmly believe in. But if you don't have something like enablement in place, to coach multiple people at the same time for maximum results, it's just going to be a longer path to success. Just one example of many. So make sure the superstructure is there. If you have to hire enablement or you need to build better materials or really codify your value prop, do that first, or else you're just elongating the path to revenue for your new hires. And you might hire incorrectly on top of it.
So, talking about people, it's funny because I was just reading this book about, hey, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. We're our geniuses, basically. And sometimes people don't even, recognize it in themselves, right? An example I'll give you is, early on in my career, I thought hey, I'm really detailed oriented. And I did this assessment and I worked with somebody. He goes, Carlos, it's amazing. You think you're detailed oriented, you suck at it. And once the person was honest with me about it, I go, you're right. I love seeing the big picture and figuring out how to get there, but I don't like to get into the nitty gritty of the, making it happen implementation side of it. And so when you think about your team and assessing talent, any recommendations on how to get people to open up and really tell you, hey, George, this is what I like to do. This is what I don't like to do. This is what I'm good at. This is what I need help with.
Oh, my God, what a good question. And I laughed when you said you're detail oriented because I know you well enough. But I used to call myself really detail oriented too. And I think when your job changes, like the folks who are probably listening into this call, you have to move fast sometimes, right? And you're faced with making the decisions that you have to make them quick, but they're reversible. That's one kind. You don't always have time for the details, but then there's the longer term stuff that you will get into the details. So give yourself some credit. I'll give myself some credit too. I just choose the time that I spend on the detail. I guess that's an interesting question. And you can probably take that a few different ways. I'd actually maybe answer something a little bit different. And it was something you said before that had me really thinking that I caught on to. We always think we're right, is kind of the way that I took it. And it's something I think about the right strategy, right? How do you pivot real quickly, and I'll merge maybe the two together. I think all of us come in thinking that we've got the right way to do something, right? And if you don't take that time to assess, gosh, you hear me say it over and over again, you're going to miss some opportunities to bring people with you. I find that everywhere I've gone, no matter how bonkers I might have thought something is, I stop and I realize, the world's full of smart people. Things are like this for a reason. Well, to go in and to meet your new team, your peers, not just people who work for you, and go, I come in, I think these things, but honestly, I want you to help me slow down and understand why are things the way they are. Why did you build it this way? How would you like to see it? And you let them go first. And you come in acknowledging that I have an instinct to make change, but I'm going to fight that. And we're going to do this together. Help me through this vulnerability. You actually get a lot of trust. And then once you do that, it's easier to understand, well, how can you get people to move with you? Is it even the right thing to do? People will open up and start asking you for help, including what they want to do next in their career, right? Which was part of your question. It's much more beneficial than coming in over the top, right? With the iron hammer and changing things. And it's genuine too. Just admit you don't know. Change. Say, look, this is my thought, but I'm open to change. And then change. It's okay. The amount of trust you'll get is enormous.
I've also kind of found that, you go into a situation and things are a certain way, but they're that way because they're parameters around it, the competition at that point in time. We were a hot new product. We demoed the hell out of it. People bought it. It's awesome. But then you hit the saturation point. You mentioned like new competition in the marketplace, economics change, and you go, hey, it's not that that way was wrong. It's we need to pivot, right? Because things are constantly changing around us.
And I think what you find when you say like pivot, you're actually going to find a room of people, assuming it's a good idea, and you vet it out, they'll be like, "Yeah, you know what? I wish that would happen. Yeah, I see that. I see the company's goals you've communicated, the 3 to 5-year North Stars, and what you're saying in order to get there, yeah, we gotta change today. But just make it so that the change is good for me, right? Because we all think about ourselves. We all do what's in it for me." So I think that's part of the trick, right, with what you're saying and how you do that softly. Always make it what's in it for them. Won't always be perfect. Change will always it won't always be as assimilated by everybody in quite the same way, and it always won't always be as beneficial. But it's going to happen, right? It is an inevitability. In fact, you represent change often if you're new to the role. You're literally the embodiment of it. That can be scary for folks. So how do you take down those barriers?
Yeah, I agree with you. All right. Earlier, you mentioned like the triangle, right? We got marketing, we got sales, we got service, we got product, and we're trying to get all these different groups, to really work together. Especially, I mean, I find them. I mean, maybe it's always been this way, and it probably has, but maybe it's because now I finally got a little older. I go, oh my God, if you can't get these functions rowing in the boat in the same direction, my God, you just create so much wasted energy in an organization. What advice do you have for getting your counterparts to kind of, work with you as you make these changes in the organization?
Yeah. And a lot of this is through trial and error. A lot of it is learning from others, watching them do it, and then just copying. But a lot of, and maybe the last third, my own experiences where it went well. But I'll tell you this: everything, personal or work life, it's about relatability and getting people, I think, to trust you and to listen to you. And you won't always, there's not one magic formula. Life's just not that easy. People are always going to have their own goals, agendas. Maybe they're stuck in the old ways. You're not going to be able to change that as well. So put some of those there. But for me, one of the biggest things is that, like I talked about, at least from a revenue standpoint, that product, marketing, sales triangle, and realizing that you have to help them with their goals first. Hopefully, they're not contrary to yours. They rarely are. But if they are, you've got to work with them as peers and your boss. And if you are, if your boss is the CEO or the board, point it out and be brave about it and do it up front. But look, you said the North Star is this. These are the 3 to 4 KPIs. You've saddled me with a KPI that requires their assistance and they haven't bought off on it. We've got a problem, right? If we don't all shoot towards the same goal, we will miss. And there's a lot of classic examples, right? Where, marketing wants people to come to the website and they call them all leads. And then the salespeople are like, well, they're not leads. Like, I don't know, came to the site, right? So there's a disconnect. But maybe salespeople should have a KPI to say, hey, it's our job to be aggressive with the leads to turn them into something more qualified as well. There's ways to close these disconnects that you have to work on. And with product folks, make sure you have the same goals. Is it sell this product? What's that product person's goal? Is it help them build a new product, roll it out, take something, blow the dust off of it and get it back into market because the market's finally ready or the product should be in the market? Get common goals. I don't know of a better way to say it than that. And make sure you're aligned that way. If you cannot get common goals, you've just got to work upwards to get there and point it out.
Good point. In order to drive consistency or a consistent selling motion, you mentioned enabling these people. What role does enablement or a sales methodology come into the mix? And should it, sometimes, right? Because I'm sure every organization, they have their approach at the time you come in.
I'm just going to tell you, I haven't been blessed with coming to an organization that had a firm approach. So that's also a good thing because it let me put my fingerprints on it as well. I find that most places that have been around for a while, a lot of the folks there, they actually do a lot of the right things. They just haven't put a label on it, or they might be able to get more traction by polishing up a step. Rarely have I seen a place where it's like, oh my gosh, this is just madness. Like, how did this work? There's actually thought to it, and people just follow a good path. It's about making them better. So I think it's huge, enablement. I think it could be scary if you don't show people what's in it for them. But I also think there's a great opportunity to take their history, what they have done, and relate it to what you want to do. So instead of it completely being a new paint job, it's actually just touching up the paint, right? Maybe it's putting in an accent wall or something like that. And of course, I'm going to say that with my two tone behind me here, but you're right. There's a difference between a gut rehab and a renovation, and I think if you frame it more as a renovation, that's usually what you need. You're gonna get great results. You'll get people onboarded faster. You'll move through the sales process more quickly. You'll be able to inspect the sales process better, all important. And yes, process consistency, very important. But here's the other thing that you miss an opportunity to do, and it goes back to your last question. If you have the chance to bring in a sales methodology and you have the chance to bring in, for example, your product and your marketing folks and maybe other teams, well, now you have a chance for the whole org to speak the same language, use the same terminology. Well, now it's a cultural matter, and now it's a company competency that you've built, understanding the buying process from the customer side or whatever you believe, using the same terms. Don't miss that golden opportunity. I think it helps everybody from marketers putting in the right collateral, your PMMs doing the same, your product folks using the right terminology when they're on calls with people and understanding why you're saying what you're saying. They're like, aha, that's why they're going slow. That's why they're asking questions and listening instead of selling. Got it, right? Don't miss that opportunity.
It's George, it's funny you say that because uh, one of my clients, I've worked with him twice before, and he had great success the last time we worked with him. And we're at this, he's at another company right now, and we're talking about doing a program there. And I was talking to him on Friday, and he said to me, Carlos, we had great success before working with you, but I'm not making the same mistake I made last time. I'm like, what?
Well,
And it's to your point. He goes, last time, I said, hey, I'll start small. I'm just going to focus on my sales guys. And he didn't bring in his services, professional services side of the organization into the mix. And then when they tried to roll out this common language, he said it felt like sales trying to tell services, hey, this is what you need to do. And it created, instead of consistency, it created conflict. So he goes, this time I'm going to get them all to the table, so we're all saying, hey, this is the right way we want to do this. This is what it means for me and my team. And I understand why the other teams, you just said it, are doing what they're doing. And you can't, he just said, I started and I dipped my toe in the water by just bringing in sales. And I made a mistake of not pulling in the other groups. If I would have had services in there to begin with, he goes, I think I would have had even greater success, because it created conflict at first because they didn't understand where we're coming from.
that's fascinating, but I get it. And the other thing you miss if you don't bring them in, some places, your solutions folks, they're talking to the technical team on the other side. They know the persona better than your sales reps often do. They know how to speak to them, and they're going to give you a better talk track for when you do end up there. So, yeah, absolutely key to have those perspectives because they speak that language better. Who better?
I got this crazy idea. Like, the reality is, no one wants to go to sales training because let's face it, if you're already doing the job, you're like, great, they're going to teach me how to do the thing I've been doing for 10, 15, 20 years. But if you really think of it, hey, we're going to evolve the way we communicate consistently across the org, maybe I'll listen. And if you make it like this evolution, which is like a 1 degree shift versus this, revolution where we're doing a 180, it gets more people on board. And I haven't figured out what word I use to replace sales training, but somehow I got to come up with this different way of getting people's mindset going into it.
Yeah, I don't know that I've cracked that either because the spectrum of folks is so different, right? You might have a new seller who just wants to learn and they realize you're investing in them and you're giving them a gift they will take with them no matter where they go. Cannot be taken away. Like a laptop or access to whatever system, it's here, right? You'll never lose it. You're investing in yourself. And then you get the other people who will just be resistant to everything that you teach them because it feels like a challenge. It feels like change, whatever the reason is. So you have to be more artful about those. Carlos, I don't have a magic bullet. Every person is different.
And now, George, I do have in 15 years of doing this, the conclusion I came to is the A players and maybe some B players are the ones that are usually confident and open to, hey, what do you got to share? I'll give you my opinion, and and I'm willing to try these things out because they're always trying to stay A players. It's the C and D players that are the most defensive. And I think it's just comes from fear, right? Hey, you're going to tell me I'm doing it wrong? This is going to expose me. And there's a lot of fear that comes to it. I mean, in some of it, I try to get people over it by just trying to get them to think about, hey, it's a 1 degree shift and we're slowly getting there so that they start coming around slowly. But in 15 years of doing this, the A players usually say the same two things at the end of every workshop. I tried to get out of this because they're always picky with their time, right? But George made me come, or my manager made me come, and I'm happy he did because this is what I got out of it. This little nugget I think is going to make a big difference. This will be great in getting us all to work better together, whatever the nugget is. And so when you look at your organization and talent, it's usually if you can get your best players to be willing to evolve with you, those implementations go great. It's when the manager is one of the CD players, then I have really big problems.
Yeah. Well, you said it right there. I mean, key leadership. I've been in sales trainings, maybe in prior roles where, the manager's not actually there, right? Like that, the head of the team's not even. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, how committed are you and how committed are people going to be? Right. And then I've had it where, call it the chief revenue officer's there and is participating. Oh man, was it different? I mean, night and day. Because people are paying attention. They see leadership's involved, people they respect are involved. And if it doesn't get repeated through managers, it's going to be hard for whatever you do to take root, be it a sales process, training, whatever it is, Carlos. And good grief, yeah. When you said the manager's a CD, yeah, that's a little tougher one, right? And sometimes there's the folks you can't move out fast enough, or you don't have the budget you can't replace, so you got to keep them. We all make trade offs in life, but I don't have a magic answer for dealing with that either. Other than if you're the manager above, you need to make sure you're involved and make it as much part of the process as you can.
Yeah, I
Highlight the
did.
people who do it, your AB players, and let them be your mouthpieces. That's your spokesperson right there.
You got a great point about it. In fact, one of my partners was just talking about how he's doing a workshop, and on the break, he's out in the hallway, and he literally hears the manager say, "Yeah, we just got to get through this class. This will pass." And you go, you guys, you might as well take the afternoon off and just burn a pile of cash that you spent on this because you're literally shooting yourself in the foot. And this was the manager saying it out in the hallway. So getting everybody on board. And that's why we kind of start with managers and end with managers. Because at the end of the day, it's your program. It's your DNA. It's your structure. And obviously, as you can tell, I'm a little bit passionate about this.
Like you do something like this for a living. Yeah, I get it. No,
All
but
right.
it's interesting to me how many people will turn away an opportunity to become better. I think you said it so well, and I hadn't put it quite that way. But your A players always want to become better.
It's like the top athletes, right? Tiger Woods had a coach to help with his swing, not because his coach was a better golfer, but because his coach did identify something that might improve his own swing,
True.
right? So it's kind of interesting.
Exactly.
All right, closing this podcast out, because George, I could talk to you forever, but we haven't gotten to the point that we're like, a 3-hour podcast yet. A couple of questions to close us out. Usually, and I hate to use the word mistake, but sometimes our biggest lessons in life are, due to a misstep. We do something and go, man, I shouldn't have done that, but I'm never doing that again. And we learned some of our biggest lessons in those directions. What might be a misstep in your career that kind of taught you some of the biggest lessons for you?
I'll pick just one. But one of them was I came into a new role, I won't say which. I had a lot of new guy energy, right? I was the shiny new object as well. They're like, all right, man, with that title, this guy's he's got something. He's got some ideas, right? He's got some pedigree. So had all of that, was able to move things a little more quickly than I might have otherwise. Be careful what you do with your new person energy, I should call it. But one of the things that I did in this particular role was I knew where we had to go, and it ultimately was the right thing, but it took too long to get there. But I wanted to start demand gen and BDR really soon, just off the bat. I thought that could be something that made a big difference. I saw a good market fit. I saw the opportunity to make an impact, right? Here's the thing, not the whole org wasn't really ready. This was still a newer concept to a lot of folks. Some people saw it as a threat. Some people had tried it, but they didn't really do it the more modern way, so it didn't work in the past. There were a lot of doubts for maybe half the room, I should say. And I guess I still went along with it, and this is another place I could have done more. I went to my partners to get their buy-in, and they were confident that they were ready to support me. It could be marketing with the message or product thinking that they had the ideal client profile, the persona figured out, the PMMs, like, yeah, we know how to talk about this. We speak in client language. It was mostly true, but they were still working on it. And I think I drove them to say yes a little bit too fast, not giving them enough time to really be ready to support the BDRs and the sales folks because meetings were coming out of this now. It's just, I got launched and they weren't target. They weren't right on, right? It took longer to really tune the model than I like to. And everyone knows if BDR or deep demand gen model takes like 9 months to get going. It took a little longer than that. And because I didn't have everyone aligned and the results weren't perfect, I didn't, I don't know that I had the whole board or the CEO fully sold on it yet either. Should have spent more time there to make sure I really outline hey, this is even where I pulled the plug on this. If we don't do X, Y, and Z, I have it in my head. Let me make sure you see it in writing and you get it and you're following me. Let me be clear about where we've had a misstep. It's going to take another 3 months, let's say. I could have done better there too. So it was moving fast, not keeping everyone up to speed. It worked eventually, let me be clear, but it was painful and it took longer to get there than it needed to be. So go back to what you're trying to do. Go back to earlier where I said go slow. Make sure everyone sees what you know, but also what you don't know, and ask for a lot of help and participation. And be honest about what's possible, in my case, from your peers, and make sure that they're able to be honest with you. If you come in too strong, they might not be willing to be vulnerable with you or honest with you either. Don't make that mistake like I did.
Well, you mentioned business development, and I had a question for you there. So one thing I'm noticing these days is this. When you and I got started, sales reps had to prospect. It was part of our jobs, right? Along the way, the role of the BDR got bigger and bigger and bigger in organizations. Plus, I say cash was cheap. So, hey, let's hire more people, right? Let's get that, business development engine going.
Right.
Nowadays, and this is where I'd love to get your opinion, cash is not cheap.
Oh,
And everybody's tightening their belt. And there's this, I see this focus on, hey, yes, we might have a lean and mean BDR team that's creating, business development leads, but reps, you got to do a bigger percentage of your own leads. You got to do some of your own prospecting. And I'm just curious about what your thoughts are on that.
I think that, oh gosh, it depends on where you work. Everyone answers the question with, well, it depends where you work. But because we're trained salespeople, we try to listen before giving advice. So you're putting me in a comfortable position, Carlos, of giving advice without knowing the background and the whole backstory. But I don't think a good salesperson ever stops prospecting. You actually end up paying your best people because they're closers, not prospectors. I really do mean that. There's other ways to prospect and get leads. Again, every business is different. You can get them off the website using cool ABM tools, BDRs. Maybe you do it through channel, or maybe, and it'll dovetail one to the other. You hire someone new who has that Rolodex, and yeah, they prospect until they get full with deals that they have to close. So that's where you want them to be. So my advice would be understand, with your cycle of your business, sure, maybe the pipeline slows down a bit, but do you have enough to close to get you through the next couple of years, particularly if you have an 18-month or a 12-month sales cycle? You might be there and you just might need to be patient and be very selective with the resources you do have. Maybe onboarding is tight, and this is okay. You can only afford to go at a certain pace. Otherwise, look, if reps aren't closing, they're not getting anything live, they're not producing revenue, I would just keep going backwards. Well, do you have the pipeline to get me the revenue? Okay, well, if you don't have the pipeline to get me the revenue, I'm sorry, but you've got to be calling. You're not above it to generate more business. And it's not like you're an outlier in the market, right? It's tighter everywhere. So I think the days of that great migration that we had where people were just changing jobs pretty quick, I think it's slowing down quite a bit. Slow down. quite a bit. So people should be considering their current roles pretty precious as well. I think
Great
if you
point.
take prospecting, you prospect. You go back to some of the basics. We all do.
All right, excellent. Last question of the day. We call it Acceleration Insights. George, what might be that one piece of advice, be it business or personal, that you would share with our listeners that would help them be as successful as you are?
All right. I'll take personal goals, Carlos, for 700. Uh, what I would say is be very relentless about sticking to a long-term goal, but just make sure that long-term goal is high level enough so that you can change how you get there. The path to these long-term goals is long and it could be windy. So don't be too stubborn about that path, about how you get there. There's going to be chaos along the way, but with chaos comes opportunity. Embrace the chaos. It won't always be easy. It won't always be good for you. But I think if you're nimble, you focus on an attainable, good long-term goal, you're going to find your way there no matter what comes. Just don't be afraid to change path.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate it. If our listeners want to learn more about you or Pagaya, what's the best way to engage with you folks?
LinkedIn, 100%. Reach out to me. Always happy to have a conversation. And looking forward to hearing from anyone who'd like to chat. Be it about payments, AI, what we do at Pagaya, the mission. There's quite a bit to talk about there. We're really breaking new frontiers. So love it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. Really appreciate it. All right, everyone. This is the end of our little episode. Thank you for listening in. If you want to check us out, you can check us out at b2brevexec.com. Please share this episode with your friends, your families, your pets, whoever will listen to it and get some value out of it is my 2 cents. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts. And if you listen to us on Apple, feel free to throw us a 5-star review. We really would appreciate it. I'm Carlos Noche. Thank you very much for listening today. We wish you nothing but the best success.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.